Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at some of the leading ladies of the Old Testament. So you've heard about a couple of the women of the Old Testament, and we're going to look at a couple more this week, 2 in the Old Testament, and then 1 that moves us into the New Testament. You know, where's the bridge, and what's the tie between some of the women of the Old Testament and the women of the New Testament? So last time we were looking at what's the tie between some of the women of the Old Testament and Mary. And this time we're going to say, what's a tie between some of the women of the Old Testament who are highlighted and Mary? And this time it's the gift of prophecy is the tie.
Right. Well, and a lot of them are connected to Jesus either through lineage or, mostly lineage.
Yeah, mostly lineage. So I just thought this was a fascinating look because the first one we're going to start with is Ruth.
Okay.
So Ruth is one of those characters that seems to be out of place with the rest of the Old Testament, right? So it's not the story of the Canaanites battling everybody and the Israelites battling everybody. It's not Exodus. It's not anything earth-shattering. It's not like Esther saving the Jewish people from annihilation. It's not like that. So I really had to think about it. Why is this story in there?
Yeah.
Why would somebody put so much effort into that? It's not like she's a prophetess. She's not a queen. She's not a princess.
Why would she get this whole section when she's not as heroic as Esther or whatever? Yeah.
So I really had to think about that. So when I was looking into Ruth, she's a Moabite, which means we know she's not from one of the 12 tribes. They're very clear. Right. She's actually called Ruth the Moabite. She's not from one of the 12 tribes.
Okay.
So I'll back way up. And interestingly enough, I always tell you what people's names mean because in that culture, what you are named means a lot. And the name Ruth means friend.
Okay.
So if you keep that in perspective, this is the story of friendship and fidelity.
Yeah, loyalty.
Loyalty, right?
Okay.
So when you think about it, so she ends up playing a significant role in the story of Jesus, but you have to really think your way through it to figure out what her role is going to be. So here's the backstory in this one. So she's a young woman. She's only been married about 10 years, and her mother-in-law loses her husband, and she loses both sons. So in that culture, Naomi's lost her husband, so she becomes a widow. Well, a widow becomes dependent on a man in the family. So you move in with your son. So husband's died, she probably moved in with one of her sons. One son dies.
Moves in with the other son.
Then the other son dies. So now you've got Naomi, who's actually from, she's actually living near the Moabite country now, but she's actually from way over here. She's actually from the country of Judah. She's from Jerusalem.
Oh, okay.
So what do?
Right.
Husband's gone. Son's gone. And you have these 2 daughter-in-laws. Well, what happens to them? Well, in Jewish culture, if one of the sons dies, this wife is given to the next son, so you don't have a widow, and so the name of the family is guaranteed to be carried on. She can't even give one of these widowed daughters-in-law to a son because both of the sons are gone. So you got these 3 women in this cultural dilemma.
Right, absolutely, without any sort of prospect.
Yeah. So Naomi's too old to get married again, and she even says, well, I have no child in my womb. She's just letting them know, I can't get married again and produce any more sons that I can betroth you to.
I am worthless is the sad thing that she's saying there.
But there are these 3 women who have basically in that culture no way to support themselves.
Yeah.
They usually couldn't own property. They couldn't run a business. What are they going to do? So Naomi makes the decision, I'm going to go back to my people. I'm going to go back to my brethren, which means I'm probably going to go back and hope I have an uncle or a brother or a cousin or something who will take me in. Well, she doesn't know because she's been gone a long time. Are they going to take me in or not? So when she makes this decision, I'm going to go back to my homeland. Sorry, her family is in Bethlehem. I'm going to go back to my homeland. She tells both of these young women, you're free to go. Because
you go back to your families.
You go back to your family. I can't help you anymore. And one does. She goes back to her family. And then Ruth says, I'm going to stay with you. And it's one of those things that's very much quoted. So 2 times she says, go back to your family. And the second time Ruth says, what we hear a lot, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. So it's this pledge of fidelity. It's this pledge of faithfulness. And she's going to go back into a Jewish culture. She's going to follow this woman back. And it's just a fascinating story because you get the feeling that Ruth must be really beautiful.
Yeah.
As the story progresses and they go back and you can imagine what the small town was like. This woman comes back and there's another woman with her, and they stop at the well, and all the people at the well start going, "Oh, who's that? Who's that?" Well,
Slack John.
I'm Naomi, and I came back. My husband's dead, and I'm not Naomi anymore. Call me Mari, which means bitterness and sadness. My name is Mari now because God took my husband. God took my sons. I have to come back here. My name is no longer Naomi.
That sounds so dramatic. I'm sorry, but it's kind of funny. It's like, call me sadness and woe.
And by the way, this beautiful
Yes,
lady
ma'am.
over here, this beautiful young lady right here,
She's single, boys.
she's available.
Anybody?
She's available. So the word gets spread out to the brethren. Naomi's back. Naomi's back.
Mm-hmm.
So what are these two ladies going to do? Well, Naomi went back because her husband had a property, and probably she wasn't allowed to inherit the property. She could sell it.
Oh, okay.
So she's got to go back, claim the property, figure out how to sell it to have some money, right? Well, first right to the property is going to go to another relative, and Naomi knows this. She knows this, so you got to just start doing in your head, who do I still have around here?
Who's not dead? That's dark.
Who might want to help me and maybe buy my property? So she tells her daughter-in-law, the way the story reads, Ruth volunteers to go to the land of one of her cousins or distant relatives, Boaz, volunteers to go and glean the grain, right? Because back then, and you see this carry through into the time of Jesus, that the Jewish people, to help care for the widows and the orphans, never fully gleaned their field. They would leave it so people could come through, the widows and people without means could come through and scrape up what grain was left and have some food. So Ruth volunteers to go do this. Now, just imagine, I have not yet been to Israel, but my husband's been a couple times, and it's apparently very hot.
Yes. Very dry.
So
very salty.
So Ruth goes out to glean the fields of the cousin or relative somehow, Boaz. So there's other young women out there doing this. There's probably all sorts of people out there just cleaning the fields. And apparently she works all day long. She doesn't even stop. She doesn't stop for water. She works. And Boaz goes by and he sees this young woman. And like I said, she must be very pretty because everybody notices her.
Yeah.
So he asked the worker guys, the reapers, he goes, well, who is that? And they go, well, this is Ruth. And they give him the whole backstory. This is Ruth, and she was a Moabite, and she was married to the son of Naomi, and Naomi's husband. You give him the whole backstory. So Boaz is impressed with this young woman, and he says, okay, which is interesting, culturally speaking. He says, do not molest her. Because if you're a young woman with no protection, you're just open to people, hitting on you and molesting you. He goes, do not molest her. Basically, my property, leave that one alone. I don't want to hear anybody messing with that one. And then he invites her to come eat. Now that's huge. And he invites her to come up, and she's just...
Old Testament flirting?
I guess so.
Is that what that is?
Yeah. Here, would you like to eat something?
Would you like a meal? Wow. That's my kind of flirting.
Basically invites her to lunch. Hey, you want to go to lunch? Sure, I'm having lunch. And she's so overwhelmed that she throws herself at his feet in a symbol of gratitude and humility, right? Obeisance. She's like down, I'm so grateful. And he makes sure she has a hearty meal, and he tells her to make sure you stay around the other young women. Please don't separate from them because bad things happen. And he says, make sure you drink from my well, which is like, you are invited to come to my property. Drink from my well.
You have my resources, yeah.
Yeah, they're at your disposal. And then she's getting ready to go back and do some more backbreaking work, because I actually imagine you spend the whole day bending over.
Yep, picking up little tiny.
And he basically tells his guys, okay, make it easy for her to get some grain. So when you read it, it sounds like he says, just open up a couple bushels and spread some stuff out to make
Oops. Oopsie. Yeah. Once again, Old Testament flirting. I love it.
So Ruth goes home with this huge satchel of food, and of course Naomi's excited, right? Because
we have food.
We have food. It's probably not only to eat; they could probably turn around and sell some of it.
Right.
So she encourages Ruth, "Hey, go back to the fields. Just get until the harvest is
do
over.
it again.
Yeah, just keep showing up every day."
Right.
So Ruth follows her mother-in-law's guidance. She goes back and she gleans till the end of the harvest. So it's like, wow. She just keeps going back, and she's now providing for her mother-in-law.
Right.
So while she was the daughter-in-law, she was provided for by the husband. She is now providing for the mother-in-law. So she becomes a source of substance. It's like this flip the script, right? She becomes the source. So at the end of the harvest, Naomi says, put on your best clothes.
Get all purtified.
Yeah, go make yourself look good. And then after Boaz has had a good meal, lay down at his feet. Like, what?
Why would she do that?
See where he's sleeping and then lay down at his feet. But I had to look this one up because, like, what is that supposed to mean? When he's had a good meal and he's sleepy and he lays down, find out where he is, go lay down on his feet. And what they would do is go lay down at the feet of a man and take part of their coverlet or blanket, whatever it was, and cover themselves. Literally a mantle of protection. So she does this. So she goes, lays at his feet, pulls some of the cover over, and he wakes up around midnight and he's shocked because there's this woman at his feet.
There's a woman in my room.
Yeah. So there's this woman at his feet.
There's a snake in my boot.
And there's this apparently beautiful young woman sleeping at his feet. And he's just shocked, but he's also kind of thrilled because she's so beautiful. It sounds like she could have had her pick of the litter.
Right.
You know, she could have gone after young guys and they would have responded. But what I like about this story is there's no bad guy, no really bad things happen. Because he turns out to be a really good guy.
Yeah, he takes care of him.
Takes really good care of her. So he tells her, you could have gone after young men. And I have to be honest with you, because I'm a good guy. There's actually a relative who's closer in relationship to Naomi than me. So he has first right of refusal on the land, and you kind of come with the land.
He gets first dibs. Sorry.
So he tells her, I will go to the market tomorrow, and I will look for this other relative, and I will offer to buy the property, but he gets first rights. And then he makes sure she gets up and goes back home before sunlight so nobody sees her, so there isn't this big
scandal.
Big scandal going on the next day. So he does. He goes into the marketplace, and he waits for the other cousin to show up. Just wait.
Joey, where you at? I got a woman with your name on it.
So he shows up and he says, he gives the whole backstory. Naomi's back. She's got this property to sell. And then he said, you have first right of refusal. And the guy sounds like he's interested. And all of a sudden he goes, oh, and there's a woman tied to this. So if you get the property, you have a wife. And all of a sudden the guy's like, no, not interested.
It's like, you had me, but then.
Maybe you already had a couple. We don't know.
Yeah.
You know, maybe if you had actually looked at her, you would have changed your mind.
I was going to say, bro, see the receipts, man.
So the other cousin says you can buy the property. So there's this, they go from just like, how are we going to eat, to have plenty to eat on a regular basis, to being able to sell the land, and she gets to be a wife of what apparently turns out to be a really great guy. And that Ruth and Boaz father a son, and they name the son in honor of Naomi's family, right? Because he understands that part of
keeping that name,
I'm
right?
keeping the family name going. And the village is so excited that Naomi has another son in the family, the grandson, that they kind of refer to the grandson as her son. So the part of me just went, you know, if you were Ruth and you were Boaz, that whole experience would be very humbling for you, because you both understand that what you're doing is carrying on really another family's lineage.
Giving a gift, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'll give you food, I'll give you sustenance, I'll give you a place to live, and I will allow you to be part of carrying on this incredible lineage. So then you get to the end of the story. It's this great story of faith and fidelity. So why is it in there? Why is this story in there? Because when you look at it, you go, okay, that was great. That was very uplifting, very inspiring.
Thank you for that, from all the doom and the gloom.
She gets a whole book. She gets a whole book in the Old Testament. And then you carry the lineage forward, and you find out that the son that Ruth and Boaz have is Obed. Obed is the father of Jesse, and Jesse's the father of
David.
Oh, okay. Father of David. So she's the great grandmother of David, right? And the Jewish people track lineage through the mother.
Oh, okay.
That's why it becomes important. Track lineage through the mother side of the family.
Well, to fulfill that prophecy, right?
Yep.
Because he will be from the line of David, blah, 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 blah. So.
Yep. So that's what you have to get to the end of the story before you realize, oh, that's why this is in here.
Why was I reading this again?
Yeah, because then you're going to see those names trickle down forward into the New Testament when we get the lineage of Jesus. It's going to be, that's why Ruth is in there. Besides the fact it's just a good feel-good story.
It was good. It was a hallmark.
It really was the hallmark story
of the Bible.
Nobody died. There was no wailing and gnashing of teeth.
There was a little bit of some tension there with that Joey the cousin, but
So then I went, okay, well, what's another bridge? So that connects us to Mary through lineage, right? So what's another bridge from the Old Testament? Another, what I call the leading lady of the Old Testament, names you hear. Because it's interesting, there are no books in the New Testament with a woman's name on it, but there are in the Old Testament. And another fascinating character was actually during the time of Judges too, because Naomi and Ruth were during the time of Judges. And this becomes important because Moses led the tribe of Israel out of Egypt. And like we know, don't walk like an Egyptian. Bad things happen.
Egypt equals bad. X circle X. It's like the Egyptian hieroglyph. There's just a big red stamp. No. Sorry, I think in cartoons, if that doesn't already. Bad.
So the next one is actually during the era of Judges as well, but this is Deborah. So she doesn't get her own book like Ruth, but she's in the book of Judges. And what makes her really stand out, so her name means God leads. She's the only woman who's named as ever having been a judge. So they didn't have a king yet. So Moses appointed judges, and then Joshua carried on that tradition, appointed judges, and she's the only woman that we hear of appointed as judge. And it's listed as she's the wife of so-and-so, and she's a mother. So we get the feeling that she isn't just this cultural abnormality. She's a real woman. She's married to a man. She has kids, right?
She's a real woman. What's compared to a fake woman? What does that mean?
Oh, but in that culture, to be a successful woman, you're married and you have kids.
Yeah.
She was there.
Heck, she'd made it. She had a career. What a woman. That's so cool, though, because as you said, you didn't really see women in leadership positions.
No.
And so to see her as a judge, and also her name's really cool. Like in today's culture, you don't meet a lot of people named Debbie, which it's not my favorite name, but I mean, God leads. That's a really cool name.
That is a really cool name. Yeah. And it says that she meets with people. So in that time, the people used to come to the judges with their problems. And that's why Moses started this whole thing of appointing judges for the different tribes, because everybody was coming to Moses. It's just all day long. Can you imagine? All day long, people sitting there while people came up and complained. So his father-in-law says, you need to appoint some judges. Get on with it. So
it's like that scene from Emperor's New Groove when all the people are coming in. And she's like, what were we talking about? He's like, food? Well, you should have thought about that before you came forward. And then kicks him out. That's okay. Deborah just sitting there kicking poor people out. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, Debbie.
But she sits under the tree of Deborah, and people come to her all day long with problems.
Okay.
Which I personally think would be exhausting. It would be like Judge Judy, except without the comforts of a bench.
Judge Judy.
No bench, no water glass. You just sit there all day when people come up.
No aggressive stare.
Yeah. No bailiff to protect you. No air conditioning, no heat in the winter. You just sit there under a tree with bugs. People come up.
Yeah. So they're kind of like Moses's, like a mayor, kind of.
That's a good description.
To like a governor, and then
Yeah. So Deborah is appointed as the judge, and we don't know how she gets appointed the judge, which really makes her stand out. Not only is she a judge, she's a prophetess. So God talks to her. And when God talks, unlike some of the other prophets, she doesn't go, I'm not listening.
Don't talk to me. Yeah.
She's not one of the ones that runs away. Like, send him to Nineveh. Not going. Not going. Not going.
Still not listening.
So she gets this message from God that the Canaanites are going to attack again.
Okay.
So this has been going on for hundreds of years now, right? Because God said, go into Canaan and please clean them out. And they didn't. They just kind of intermingled. Like, we'll just be friends with them.
That's the opposite of cleaning them out.
They look okay over there. Those dust bunnies are fine, honey. Just leave the dust bunnies.
Just gotta sweep them under the rug.
So God gives her this message. Canaanites are coming. You need to get your army together. So Deborah reaches out to General Barak and says, okay, the word of God says the Canaanites are coming. And she says, you need to raise an army. So go to the people of Naphtali and go to the people of Zebulun and raise an army. And rather than just go, okay, the word of God spoke, General Barak does this. He says, I heard you, but I'm not sure I really want to go unless you go with me. It's kind of like you're my personal little good luck charm. So I just can't imagine, He said, well, I'll go if you go.
Exactly. I'll do it if you do it. What is this? Getting a tattoo?
So she's telling him that Sisera's coming and it's not a good thing. I think Sisera had like 900 chariots or something, which is like to them a big number.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of people, a lot of horses, a lot of weapons. So she's just kind of taken aback and she says, essentially, I'll go with you, but you need to know that if this is how you want this to play out, God's not going to give you the credit for the victory. The credit for the victory is going to go to a woman.
No.
So sure enough, she packs up her stuff and she and Jonah Barak and the soldiers from these 2 tribes of Israel go down. They leave Mount Tabor. They go to fight.
Mm-hmm. Insert Mulan.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, trumpet sounds, rolling chariot noises.
Exactly. Drumline.
So the big battle commences, and sure enough, they defeat Sisera. Mm-hmm. Not only do they defeat Sisera, he does the one thing that as a commander you never do. Runs away from the battlefield and leaves his soldiers dying on the battlefield.
Oh, no.
I think that's the one thing you learn right away in the army. Never leave a comrade on the battlefield.
Nope.
He just takes tail and runs off. Buddy. Not only does he take tail and he runs off, he runs to this little tribal community, the Kenites, and basically just knocks on the door of a tent. He probably just rips it open. There's a woman in there, and her name is Jael. And he goes, I'm coming in. Please hide me, and if anybody comes, tell them I'm not here. Okay. So she lets him come in. She's,
please.
Okay. Yeah, no, please come in, you chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
Please come in, and I will hide you under an animal skin. I will hide you under the rugs. Mm-hmm. So he comes in and he says, I'm thirsty. Will you give me something to drink? Mm-hmm. She goes, sure. I think he asked for water, but instead she gives him milk, which is a little confusing thing because it's like, is it curdled milk? It's really hot there. But she gives him milk. You know how you give babies milk to make them calm down, fall asleep. So she gives him some milk, and he falls asleep. What she does is she takes a big tent peg, pounds it into his head, and nails his head to the ground.
Oh my gosh.
This woman is not messing around, buddy. We're not going to tie him up. We're going straight for the head.
That's so dark.
So he runs away from his troops, and a woman, Jael, kills him. So does Barak get a lot of credit for this battle? No. So then you go on after this, all this happens. There's about 1.5 pages of the poem that describes Deborah. It's like 1.5 pages long poem. And it's how wise she is and how brave she is and what a great leader she is. And her wisdom will go on for centuries. La, 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 la. And they mention the wonderful Jael who killed Sisera. And, yeah. And interesting enough, like Barak is mentioned in 2 sentences in 1.5 pages.
Oh, yeah. He was a general.
And it's a great song. It's Arise, 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 Deborah, and sing. But it's just such a great story. So you got a female prophet, and she's a leader, and the woman who destroys really the remnant of the army is the guy who runs away from his troops. The one who kills the general is a woman. So Barak doesn't get basically any credit for this at all.
Well, and the kind of the position or her role in this whole thing was almost kingly. I mean, the way that she like talked to everybody, it was kind of like, I'm the boss and you're going to listen.
Yeah, even when she tells him it's time to go into battle, when I think, what does she say? Up, for this is the day in which the Lord has given Sisera into your hand. Does not the Lord go before you? It's like command your troops. Ready, forward, march.
Like, let's go. Yeah.
You know? So she's just an interesting woman. And what is the key takeaway there? It's like fidelity to God, courage, leadership, sense of purpose. You're just like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and fear and not fearing when God called her, like not having fear. There we go. Sorry.
Yeah.
Because that happens a lot to us. Like we do hear God, we just don't realize it, but we still are so afraid because like, oh, what if I fail? What if I this? What if I that? And so it takes a lot of courage to actually take action when God calls you to do something. And for her as a woman to do anything, right? To do anything, especially in a leadership role. I mean, women were property. So.
Yeah. But that's really striking to me because when you just said it, like that is the big underlying takeaway there is she heard the word of God and she just followed it, even when the general basically said, I really don't want to do this.
Yeah.
And she followed it anyway, because when you read about Moses, basically 7 times Moses told God, I don't think I'm your guy. Really, no. Mm-hmm. Jonah, what does he do? He gets in a boat and tries to get away.
It's true. He's like, rowing. No.
And then we got Elijah who lays down to die when God tells him to do something. Nope, I'm just going to run in here. And the ravens come and feed him. Like,
he's like, and now I shall die. You're so dramatic. Get up. Jeez. That's so funny. Oh, man. That Deborah, yeah, so this story reminds me of Joan of Arc. It's almost exactly what happens with Joan of Arc, right? Because God is like, okay, so France is going to and I want you to lead my army and save the world, pretty much. And she's like, okay, so she goes to the general and the king. It sounds like exactly the same.
Yeah. Yeah, because that goes to, who else said yes to God without stopping and going, well, I don't know. Mary.
Right. Yeah.
Like, okay, because like we talked about that. When Mary said yes, an unwed mother could have been stoned by her own father, dragged out by the villagers and killed, and without hesitation says,
dead.
Yeah.
You fired.
Yeah, without hesitation, she says yes. Deborah says yes, I'll do what you ask me to do. Mm-hmm. It just takes so much courage.
Yeah.
So much terrifying. Courage to just say yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the last one is our bridge to the New Testament.
Okay.
So who's the first female prophet we meet in the New Testament?
In the temple?
Yes.
Anna? Right?
Anna.
Okay.
Right. So the bridge between the New and the Old Testament is that word prophet. So we've got the story of Anna. And it's kind of a tragic story.
Yeah, a little bit.
So, we started over here with Naomi and Ruth. And Naomi loses her husband and her sons. And it sounds like Ruth and her husband had only been married for about 10 years when she becomes a widow. Anna had only been married 7 years when she becomes a widow. And we don't know why she never married again, but she didn't. So maybe her husband's family didn't have any more sons. She didn't have a family to go back to. We don't know why, but rather than remarrying or going back to her family, she stays in the temple for the rest of her life. Anna lives in the temple, fasting and praying every day. Mm-hmm. Wow. So you turn around, and the ultimate sign of a good life was a husband and kids. You don't have either one.
Yeah.
So she chose to have a
what are you?
What are you? She becomes consecrated, consecrates her entire life to God. And here's where the cool stuff comes in. Like, I know you go like, oh, she's going to do it again. She's going to talk about numbers and names. She's going to do it again.
When is she going to quit doing that?
So the name Anne means grace.
Okay.
So does it sound like her life's been grace so far?
Not particularly.
No, not particularly. Doesn't have what most of us would see with success. And she spends all this time in the temple praying. And then this is where the cool part of the numbers comes in, because 7 is the number of perfection, right? Mm-hmm. And she was a widow for 77 years.
Oh.
10 times the number of perfection. These numbers all mean something, right? They would have all known, like, oh, the numbers. She was a widow at 7 years, but 77 years is a widow. So that's God. Number 10 is God's dominion. 7 is the number of perfection. She gave herself completely to God's dominion, 7 times. Like, wow, that's pretty cool. So she's hanging out there. So now by the time we move forward and Jesus is born, and Mary and Joseph bring the baby to the temple like they're supposed to do. And the first person they go to is going to be Simon, right?
Right.
You're going to bring your son to, who's probably a priest, for the blessing and the consecration of the child. So I don't think Mary and Joseph probably saw Anna when Mary and Joseph were giving the baby for his blessing. It was probably on the way back out, where the women were, because they were not allowed to the inner room. So when you read it, it doesn't sound like Anna and Simon were probably together in this, but she takes the child, she praises God. And now, okay, here's the number thing again. 7 years married, 77 years a widow, 84. What number times something equals 84? Make it stop, Maureen.
Don't ask me to do mental math. I can't even figure out what 7 times 7 is, okay?
So I had to look that one up. So 7 is the number of perfection. 7 times 12 is 84.
Right.
12, right? That's a powerful number. To them, that's why you have 12 judges, 12 disciples, 12 tribes. So 12 is the number of complete perfection of God's leadership. So, if you were paying attention here and you were one of the people trained, you would go, oh, there's a lot of symbology going on here.
Mm-hmm.
This woman here is like tremendous amount of symbology. Her name, how long she was a widow, how long she served in the temple. I mean, this is a powerful symbol from God, is this one woman, Anna. And then she's so excited after this. I love this. It says, Luke says she spread the word and brought the arrival of the Savior after giving thanks to God, quote, and coming up at that very hour, she gave thanks to God and spoke of him to all who were looking for the redemption of Jerusalem. So this lady was 84, and my mother's 84. This lady was 84, no husband, no kids, no lineage, but she's the one who gets to meet Jesus and spread the word and go out. And she's so excited. It sounds like she just went on and told anybody who would listen. Yeah. The Savior just showed up.
Hey, guys, check it out.
84-year-old woman, you just can imagine picking up her robes and just running around.
That's a cute image.
He's here, you guys. He's here. He's here. I just thought that was so cool because when you think about it, most women live longer than men. Mm-hmm. And most women live significantly longer than men. Mm-hmm. And when you look around, I think a lot of people reach the point where like, oh, I'm too old. My life, what is the point of my life? Why am I still here? And this woman at 84 is called to send this message out.
Yeah, she still has a mission.
Yeah, it's just this powerful message of no matter how old you get, you're still here for a reason. Mm-hmm. You're still can be an instrument of God when you say yes.
Yeah.
That's cool. Because just imagine her, hike up her skirt, just running, so excited, talking to everybody in the temple, and then running down the street, knocking on people's doors. He's here. Yeah. He's here.
No, it's true. It's very true. I mean, thinking about being around family members that are older, you hear them a lot complain like, I'm ready. I'm ready to go. I should be pushing up daisies by now, or something like that. And they get discouraged, but that's an excellent message to share where it's like, no. Like if you're still here, you still have a mission because God doesn't make anything or keep anything in existence that doesn't have purpose or point in his plan. Yeah.
And that, just reminds me because women do live longer than men. Pope John Paul the Great said something a couple decades ago that really got my attention. And it was, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said, the future of the church is the women sitting in the pews. Because when you turn around, who does most of the volunteer work, right? Who teaches vacation Bible school? Who teaches Sunday school? Who sings in the choir, really? Yeah. The richness of the church, the traditions of the church, the one-on-one teaching and the classroom teaching often comes from the women. Yeah. They carry all of those lovely traditions and the theology forward in their own way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you hear a lot like, oh, why can't women be priests? Like, how are we supposed to participate in the church? Like, blah, 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 blah. And they already have. Yeah. Like they already keep the church going because, either it be catechizing to the youth or whatever it is, yes, priests are involved in that, but they're also, everyone has it's very structured. You don't realize that it is, but everybody's role is very structured and this does this and this role does this. You can't have one role that, it just does everything. You need all those different parts of the church in order for it to last for, over 2,000 years. So.
Yeah. And women step in and fill so many roles. Mm-hmm. So many roles. And I was just thinking about this. I try to read the Bible every day. I try to spend 20 minutes of prayer time every day or so. And I thought, and this woman spent 77 years in there fasting and praying. 77 years. Wow.
That's a commitment.
That's a huge commitment. I won't complain about so in 2023, it's like 2023 is 23 minutes of reading the Bible every day and then 23 minutes in prayer. And this lady did this for 77 years.
I know. I'm over here with 10 minutes like, are we done yet? Can I go now? Yup. Alrighty. Yeah. Well, that was excellent. We found that the Bible has much humor. I love that. Alrighty, guys. Well, as you know, episodes come out on. When did I move it to? Is it Wednesdays now?
Thursday. Wasn't it
Thursdays. Thursday mornings at 10. Please follow us on social media. Salt and Light Catholic Radio. It's the ampersand, I believe. That's the name of it, right? The symbol.
Oh, is that what that's called?
I think that's what it's called.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Comment below. I don't think I have anything else. Did you want to add anything before we?
No, now when you read the story of Ruth, you'll start to understand, why do we hear about Ruth? Mm-hmm. Instead of just where you go, I will go, your God will be my God.
Right, that
like there's more to it than that.
There's a little more sauce.
There.
Excellent. Alrighty, guys. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you next time.
Okay, bye-bye.